This is TWiT.
Apple's facing a €500 million fine in the EU for trust violations. This is an older case, not a Digital Markets Act case. It's an older case that I think Spotify brought up. Spotify saying this is not a competitive platform on the iPhone. Apple has its own app pre-installed. We have to get people to install it. And then if we want people to buy music in our app, we'd have to give Apple 30%. So we don't do that. Apple, of course, doesn't have to pay Apple anything for buying music on its platform. I actually think this seems like a fairly reasonable antitrust fine. You agree, Shoshana?
So I haven't had a chance to dig into this one yet, but
just happened today. Yeah.
I knew that this one's like crazy recent because there's been so much stuff happening in the EU. I just worry sometimes when they go after app stores because I know app stores are also legitimately trying to protect people from cyber harm. And I think that that's something that's real and kind of reasonable because everyone's like stuff is getting leaked constantly, which isn't great. So, on the technological side, I'm always just a little bit torn because like I kind of want companies to be able to do what they're doing, especially when it is in pursuit of protecting users. But I also get that like they're not fond of app store fees, but I'm also not fond of a lot of the stuff the EU has been doing. So, I kind of get it.
That's why I asked you because, of course, you're free. Our street, the company you work for, is a free market forward think tank, right? That's probably the best way to characterize it. And this is, a free market, but yet the free markets don't work unless there's some sort of regulation on monopoly. Isn't that the case too? That's required?
Well, there's already competition. Like you can have an Apple, you can have Android. There are other.
That's what Apple says.
Less popular.
That's what Apple says. We'll just get an Android device. Yeah, if you want.
That's why I do because I feel like Apple gatekeeps stuff too much, and some people like it and like the other features. But like I feel like sometimes Apple devices are just too closed for me, so I'm not always a big fan of them. So I don't know. For me, I'm just kind of like I live what I preach, but I know that's a lot to ask of normal people just trying to go out about their day and stuff.
I should mention this is a Financial Times scoop from Javier Espinoza. The fine is expected to be announced early next month, but he says according to 5 people with direct knowledge of the long-running investigation, €500 million is a lot of money. It did get a $1.1 billion fine in France for something similar, which was later revised down to a third that on appeal. And of course, there'll always be appeals, and they can drag this out for a while. But this is a lot stronger than anything the U.S. has done about the App Store. The EU seems to be the kind of the knife edge of this kind of thing. But I don't know if that's good or bad. You don't like the idea, or do you?
No, I don't know. I just kind of worry, like, even in the U.S., like, I feel like politicians have really enjoyed going after the app stores and after tech in general. Meanwhile, like, I had a rental car company take, like, a couple of thousand on my credit card for saying I'd stolen a car, even though I hadn't stolen a car.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
And
that's happened to you? I've seen stories about that.
They didn't throw me in jail because it wasn't Hertz. Hertz will throw you in jail. And I'm like, maybe there's something we do about this.
Had you returned the car?
Yeah, I returned it. I actually had to ask an airport to get me video of me returning the car.
Oh my God.
And before they returned it, they're like, whoops, someone returned it in Minnesota. Bye. And I'm like, cool, so do I get my money back? And I'm not saying, there's not legitimate qualms against certain tech companies, but I kind of feel like taking thousands of dollars out of random people's accounts and lying and saying they stole a car, and in Hertz's case, throwing them in jail might be a bigger concern. Maybe that's just me.
Did you not get your money back?
It took a little bit, but I did.
Eventually.
And no apology. No apology. They're like, bye. So now I just record me. I like selfie and then turn the camera around. I'm like, here's me. Here's the car.
Returning the car.
So that way I can have it.
Or get a receipt if you had a paper receipt that says, I How could?
If you return after hours, you don't get a paper
that's
receipt.
right. You just leave it there.
And I had an early flight because I'm just an evil person who loves to vex car companies. But
you want that old beat up Saturn. You want it. I want it badly.
It was a nice car. It's like if I was going to steal a car, it probably would have been like something in that range.
Shh,
but,
don't admit that. Don't admit that. All right. Abrar, what do you think? This is a reasonable fine? Will it change Apple's? It's certainly not going to change how Apple does business.
Yeah, I was kind of reflecting on the fact that Apple's kind of been, companies like Google and Meta kind of get these things all the time. And I'm like, okay, it's interesting to see Apple now in in this position. It's interesting just given the history with Spotify and how Spotify has kind of had to push back on a lot of things like, if I recall correctly, initially not being able to play Spotify on a HomePod or an Apple Watch. And then that's kind of slowly rolled back. But I guess it's assuring, I think, in the sense to have a company as big as Apple still be scrutinized as much as others. But I do agree with Shoshana in the sense that it feels like a lot of government bodies are just relentlessly going after tech companies. And it would make sense if they knew what they were talking about, at least U.S. Congress people. And I feel like a lot of times they just don't. But I do think, to the EU's credit, there have been things that have benefited us just kind of globally. I do think, small things like, universal charging, USB-C, that kind of stuff, like small conveniences that are like, okay, this is good. So there can be good that comes from these kinds of things, but sometimes it's like, oh, you're really leaning into this, huh?
It really brings out different points of view from different people. Everybody here and everybody who watches our shows loves tech. That's kind of what we're into. So I think the natural tendency would be to say, well, how dare they, tell us how to run our tech companies? They're doing a pretty good job. Obviously, people are buying their products. What are they doing, telling us what to do? And I understand that point of view, but I also understand the point of view that, but these companies have gotten pretty large, pretty powerful, and don't really seem to care much about, any of this stuff. And they just want more money and more power. And if government doesn't step in, I don't know who will. It's not like I'm going to go to court against Apple.
Yeah. And I think a prime example of when I do want the government to step in more is with things like AI, where I'm like, if we don't act now, we're going to, have another Facebook/Meta situation on our hands where there is, all these privacy concerns. And so, I think there is a responsibility upon the government to kind of act, but to also do your research and know what you're talking about.
Yeah. AI is an interesting topic. I think nobody has enough few have enough affection for AI to defend it. Whereas a lot of people will defend their iPhones to the death, right?
Oh, yeah.
So AI is probably more at risk than Apple is. Hey, thank you for watching this little snippet from our big show, the News Roundtable, This Week in Tech. I'm Leo Laporte. Each week we cover the week's tech news, in-depth analysis, but it's also fun and engaging. You'll find it at twit.tv along with all of our shows. And if you want more, just hit the subscribe button, and we'll be sure to bring you a lot more great content. Thanks for listening.